After a devastating plane crash in South Korea, Taipei's Songshan Airport checks its own safety preparations. Chinese state-sponsored hackers broke into U.S. Treasury documents, the latest in a string of Chinese hacks. The number of Chinese military aircraft that breached Taiwan's ADIZ reached an all-time high this year. We take a look at the breakdown. Plus, a new exhibition highlights Taiwan's recent baseball glory. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Liao. South Korean officials will begin safety inspections on all Boeing 737-800 aircraft operated by the country's airlines as they try to figure out what caused Sunday's deadly Jeju Air plane crash. Only 2 of the 181 people on board the plane survived the disaster. It's prompted countries around the region, including Taiwan, to look at their own safety mechanisms. Joyce Sun reports.
Authorities in South Korea are still racing to identify bodies 2 days after the shocking crash of a Jeju Air passenger plane at Wuhan Airport, the country's worst ever air travel disaster. The passenger plane traveling from Thailand to the airport in South Korea's southwest killed 179 people, all but 2 people on board. Mourning family members can only pray and wait for all victims to be found, with some urging officials to hire more people to aid the effort. A test for the country's acting president Choi Sang-mok here at a memorial for the victims who took office less than 48 hours before the crash.
겨울이지만 온도가 굉장히 지금 올라가고 있습니다. 그러다 보니 유족들의 시신들이 급속히 부패가 이루어질 상황이 발생을 할 수가 있더라고요.
Questions remain about what exactly happened after the pilot made a mayday call reporting a bird strike. The Boeing 737-800 aircraft then made an emergency belly landing without its gear and wheels, skidding and then slamming into a concrete wall, almost 250 meters after the end of the runway. Wuhan Airport was known to have a runway nearly a kilometer shorter than most international airports.
It really has to be a series of catastrophic events that lead to such a high loss of life. It is incredibly unusual.
Following the deadly crash, concerns in neighboring Taiwan arose over the safety of its own Songshan Airport. Though not the country's main air hub, Songshan is right in the capital city, with a runway that's 2,600 meters long, 200 meters shorter than that at Wuhan Airport. But Taiwan's Transport Safety Authority has reassured that Songshan's safety features are in good order and explained that the end of the runway is fitted with a crushable material called Engineered Materials Arresting Systems, or EMAS, designed to stop aircraft that overrun.
EMAS 本身是一个轻质混凝土的结构，也就是说，当飞机在一定的速度撞到这个轻质混凝土，飞机里面的发动机跟飞机的蒙皮结构都不会受到任何的损害，所以这个轻质混凝土就会散成一个粉末状。
The material was installed following a 2004 incident at the airport, where a TransAsia Airways plane overran the runway, coming just 15 meters short of a barrier. But aviation experts say that EMAS material may not be enough if aircraft are making emergency landings at high speeds. As renewed scrutiny falls upon airport designs and safety, these families in South Korea are now camped out at the airport, in shock and inconsolable as they wait to be reunited with their loved ones' remains. 康木旭 and Joyce Sun for TaiwanPlus.
《
For Taiwan Plus. 《  Taiwan Plus. 《 Taiwan Plus. 》 for 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 Taiwan Plus. 《 Taiwan Plus. 》 for
The U.S. says that Chinese state-sponsored hackers were able to access computers of U.S. Department of Treasury employees. It's one of a string of Chinese state-sponsored hacks that has become public in recent years. Chris Gorin has more.
Chinese state-sponsored hackers were able to gain access to internal documents of the U.S. Treasury Department. That's according to a letter from the Treasury to the Senate's Banking Committee. Now, in short, the letter says that on December 8th, the department was notified by a third-party software provider called Beyond Trust that a key for one of its cloud services had been compromised by a Chinese state-sponsored actor. That actor was able to access certain employee workstations along with several unclassified documents maintained by those users. And they added that the compromised service was taken offline and that there's no evidence that the hackers still have access to Treasury information. The Chinese embassy in Washington has denied that Beijing was involved in the hack. And China has always denied involvement in any hacks against U.S. systems, but there have been several well-publicized attacks against such systems attributed to Chinese state-sponsored actors. While from a U.S. perspective, it's certainly not good that these Chinese hacks have succeeded, a cybersecurity expert I spoke with told me the fact that many of these state-sponsored actors have been publicly identified indicates that U.S. cyber defense is working. After all, these are clandestine operations. And there may be U.S. hacking operations against China that are successful but haven't been made public. So this is all part of the espionage game played between major powers. And it's not likely to be the last state-sponsored hack that we're going to hear about. Joseph Wu, Ryan Wu, Alec McDonald, and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan is reporting 5 Chinese military aircraft operating around the country since Monday, 3 of which flew closer and breached the country's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. This is all part of a record amount of military activity from China this year, as our reporter Jaime Okan now explains.
2024 has been a record-setting year for Chinese military activity around Taiwan, with Beijing setting a record high number of aircraft breaching Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. That's this white box here that surrounds Taiwan. Now, looking at the data over the years, when Taiwan's military first made this information public in 2020, we saw the number of incursions annually at a little bit less than 400. The actual number is 390. But since then, incursions have skyrocketed, and now we're seeing over 3,000 Chinese military aircraft breach the ADIZ in a year. So how did we get there? Well, looking at total activity through 2024, a lot of analysts are pointing to May, which is coincidentally the same month in which Lai Ching-te, right here, the same month in which Lai Ching-te, current President Lai Ching-te, was inaugurated. We can see a clear correlation between his inauguration and activity kind of surging. Now, I want to go back to this map over here that shows Taiwan's different ADIZ sections. Now, it's not just about the numbers. China is also changing the way in which it operates within Taiwan's ADIZ. What we used to see is China's military kind of operating here in the southwest section. They would breach this corridor, stay there for a few hours, and then return pretty much a U-turn back to base. And the purpose of that is to put pressure on Taiwan's military. What we're seeing now is something a little bit different. What we're seeing now is China conducting more complex operations, breaching the southwest corridor, wrapping around, and even sometimes operating on the east coast of Taiwan. Now, earlier I spoke to Ben Lewis. He's a defense analyst who tracks Chinese military activity in the region, and he says that this is all part of a new transition.
Well, I think so far what we've seen is they've transitioned to a focus on actually training in ways that matter to them, right? When we first started getting information on these activities, based on what we were told at least, it seemed like the PLA was it was for presence. We want to be around Taiwan. We want to be in the Southwest ADIZ. After Pelosi visited in August 2022, it became, we're going to erase the median line. We're going to assert ourselves on both sides of the median line in the Taiwan Strait. Then in 2023, into 2024 especially, it became much more about, okay, now we have essentially de facto control over these areas or freedom of movement in these areas. How can we best utilize that to develop our forces? So you mentioned the combat readiness patrols. Those increased in number. Taiwan is tracking much more PLA activity on its east flank in the Western Pacific. That's a relatively new trend. I anticipate that will continue.
When we look at the numbers going from barely 1,000 to doubling that, now we're pushing past 3,000 incursions every year. What happens next? What can Taiwan do to combat this rise, this clear rise in aggression from China?
To be honest, I don't think the acute nature of the challenge has been communicated well to the public. I think that the strain that this is putting on Taiwan's armed forces is understated by the MND. I think the intensity of dealing with these aircraft that are flying such that sometimes the MND only has minutes to assess where they're going to go and how they need to respond to that. And I think it derives from a lack of transparency from the MND to fully understand the picture, the threat picture that China has created for Taiwan. So I think naval activity is a serious concern for Taiwan, and I think it would be beneficial for the MND to let the public know what the scope of the PLA's naval activity is, because I think the biggest challenge with this is that this is an acute security threat during peacetime. It has implications for wartime, but it's affecting Taiwan's security right now. But we don't know how badly unless we're told.
Now, there have been calls for Taiwan's defense ministry to provide more information about what exactly is happening in the ADIZ. But at the rate that we're seeing these numbers increase, one thing is very clear, and that's that China is trying to create a new normal.
5 years ago, on December 31st, 2019, reports of a mysterious virus spread around Wuhan, China. Even now, the World Health Organization is still demanding answers about the source of the virus and how it spread so quickly. While the world dealt with the devastating consequences of COVID-19, Taiwan's prompt and effective handling of the pandemic was widely praised. Tiffany Wong takes a look back.
January 2020, ahead of the Lunar New Year. Out of China, the first signs of what would become a global pandemic, a mysterious pneumonia-like virus spreading in the central city of Wuhan.
讲真的，我不知道我看到的报道哪些是真的。我觉得可能数量远不止现在报道的。
Health officials in Taiwan also began investigating reports of the virus.
5 years ago, on December 31st, yes, I was serving as a duty spokesperson of Taiwan CDC, and that's the time we pick up a social media message from our largest web forum, PTT, about a mysterious Wuhan pneumonia outbreak in the hospital. So that's how the response started. The day one of COVID-19 response in Taiwan.
Taiwan was taking no chances. The country had learned the lessons from SARS in 2002, the original coronavirus outbreak, which also began in China. At that time, denials from the Chinese government led to deaths in Taiwan. The government flagged the World Health Organization and required inbound passengers from Wuhan to quarantine.
已经出现了人传人和医务人员感染。
As cases began spreading around the globe, the World Health Organization officially declared COVID-19 a pandemic on March 11, 2020. A pandemic that would infect at least 777 million people and kill at least 7.1 million over the next 5 years. Masks were sold out, hospitals were full, and then the morgues were too. But for the first year, Taiwan managed to escape the worst of it.
I think, Taiwan had being an island nation, there were certain conditions that allowed it to feel more secure. So one of those was that they were able to close the borders, and that brought the number of cases down. But again, in doing that, they also had this sort of false sense of security.
Quarantine for inbound passengers, frequent temperature checks, and masking helped Taiwan achieve zero COVID for months until summer 2021, a year into the pandemic.
各位国人同胞，大家好。 过去这一周，疫情的威胁仍然很大。
Taiwan's COVID cases spiked, and what was seen as a well-prepared early response had caused people to be overly relaxed.
Suddenly, when in the summer of 2021, they started closing everything down, and they realized that less than 1% of the population was vaccinated. So then there was this big scramble for vaccines, and so that created a problem.
Taiwan also faced problems getting vaccines imported once they became available. Distribution deals with China made getting the vaccines to Taiwan tricky, often having to go through private channels. The whole country was glued to Taiwan's Central Epidemic Command Center's daily press conferences. This public awareness was key to the successful containment of COVID-19 clusters.
I think people were very focused on those press conferences, and that was ultimately to the benefit of the COVID response in Taiwan, because then you have the central platform that people are reacting to, whereas I think in the US and elsewhere, information was very spread out.
By 2022, Taiwan began to relax restrictions as vaccines started to arrive and more people got vaccinated. The CECC disbanded, and in 2023, the WHO officially declared the pandemic over. But Taiwan's health ministry is still on alert.
Well, I think to most of the people in the world, COVID is over. But for me, as a public health official and a doctor, COVID is never over.
And it's with this vigilance and transparency that health officials hope they can prevent greater losses in the likely event of another pandemic at some point in the future. Chris Ma, Alec McDonald, and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up after the break, just ahead of the new year, we look back on major moments in Taiwan in 2024.
Contestants, but there can only be one winner. Award-winning underwater photographers and professional free diving models from all over the world, all trying to win $20,000 US. Welcome back to the Aqua Challenge.
然后想要上前3名的话就找我。我录不下去啊。
Freediving is considered one of the world's most dangerous sports. Well, because I don't know about you, but I rather enjoy breathing.
Oh my God, so cold! So fast!
啊，我想吐。
它风我在下面感受不到，但是我有看到上面水花非常大。
一个不小心没做好平压，
我的头好痛，我真的很累。
自己并不满意这张照片。
听得到吗？听得到吗？
Owen and Pepe had a difference of 1 point.
That's hard, because it looks really, really good. Oh my God.
So you're not happy with your photo?
I'm incredibly sad about my photo.
I'm sorry, you're last.
Aqua Challenge, every Sunday, 10 p.m. on TaiwanPlus.
For more stories from Peru and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. An exhibition to relive Taiwan's journey to the WBSC Premier 12 Baseball Championship is kicking off in Taipei in the new year. Our reporter Sandy Chi gives us a sneak peek of the event.
A special exhibition is kicking off here in the heart of Taipei to help town's baseball fans relive the country's journey to the WBSC Premier 12 Championship. Called Behind the Champion, it's held at the National Taiwan Museum, next to what was originally the Taipei New Park Baseball Field. A day before the official opening of the exhibit, President Lai Ching-te visited it.
我要特别利用这个难得的机会，再次感谢我们国家代表队为国家争取最大的光荣。我也非常希望我们来看参展的民众，能够看到冠军杯的荣耀，看到冠军选手的不容易，也能够看到他们背后的辛苦。
Around 50 items are on display here, including the champion trophy, which is said to weigh up to 12 kilograms. Gloves, balls, helmets, and even the bases Taiwan's players took from the stadium in Tokyo are also here for visitors to see. The national team's manager Zheng Haoju says seeing these items brings out strong emotions.
每一段都是他有一个心路历程的一个故事。那我们希望说，大家进场来看博物馆的时候，希望是来看我们的一个台湾的一个故事，这是属于台湾人的荣耀。
Among all the items, One marks the beginning of Team Taiwan's success at the tournament. It's the bat that slugger Chen Chengwei used to hit his Grand Slam. It was the first Grand Slam in Team Taiwan's history at the WBSC Premier 12 tournament and was also Chen's first one at an international event. The exhibition will be open to the public from January 1st to March 2nd, giving Taiwan's baseball fans enough time to visit and celebrate the country's triumph. Devon Sayan Sanichi in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
With just a few hours to go before the new year, we take a look back at some of the major events TaiwanPlus covered in 2024.
"2024 could see a new world order, with elections set to take place in at least 40 countries and territories this year, and Taiwan is one of them."
各位永远站在台湾人民这一边，好不好？这是战争与和平的选择。
你们要的公平正义，是我一直奋斗的理由。
Liao will replace Tsai Ing-wen as president in a historic third term for the Democratic Progressive Party.
此时此刻，我们不只是见证新政府的开始，也是再一次迎接得来不易的民主胜利。程序要正义，司法要公平。
Protesters here are accusing President Lai Ching-te's government of misusing the law and the media to suppress its opponents.
我们3点半。
With a rubber chicken even brought out to taunt one of the legislators. The Taipei District Court has just ruled to detain Ko Wen-je for a second time.
Taiwan's Coast Guard is defending its actions after 2 Chinese nationals were killed near the Jingmen Islands.
Some of the largest drills we've seen from China in almost a year.
China is strangling Taiwan like an anaconda.
Pagers, which exploded in Lebanon, killing as many as 43 people, have been linked to Taiwan.
A deadly earthquake rocked Taiwan's east coast early on Wednesday.
We're on Taiwan's east coast, around 60 kilometers from the epicenter, and we can't go any further along this road because of the massive damage the earthquakes caused.
As Typhoon Kongray rips through the city, those extreme winds have been downing trees, traffic lights, and electrical wires.
The health ministry reported that hundreds of people sought treatment for heat-related illnesses this summer, with each month exceeding the previous year's report. A total of 122 artists performed at Taiwan's pavilion at the Cultural Olympiad, held alongside the Summer Games.
Despite the rain, fashion enthusiasts still showed up, bringing their own perspectives on what it means to dress Taipei.
TaiwanPlus is here in Paris, France, following the Olympics.
For the second Summer Games in a row, a local anchor in the host city has explained to viewers watching the opening ceremony that Chinese Taipei is Taiwan.
Olympic staff snatched signs with the words Taiwan on it, saying the name was banned at the Paris Games.
Taiwanese badminton duo Li Yang and Wang Qilin have taken gold in Paris.
Taiwanese boxer Lin Yuting fought her way past elite opponents and fierce scrutiny about her gender to win Olympic gold in women's featherweight boxing.
Taiwan is celebrating today after its baseball team won the WBSC Premier 12 tournament in Tokyo.
great to be in Taiwan. Before I head out to the night market, let's dive into some exciting frontiers of digital humans.
Taiwan and our partnership has created the world's AI infrastructure.
The world's biggest chip maker, TSMC, has formally opened its first fab here in Japan.
Nympia wins!
I know it says Chinese Taipei, but in my world it says Taiwan.
If you can't love yourself, how you gonna love somebody else?
Taiwan has elected its first openly LGBTQ+ legislator.
Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus News all throughout 2024. As the year comes to a close, we leave you with images of the military's honor guard rehearsing for New Year's Day flag raising at the presidential office. I'm Liao. Take care and Happy New Year.